Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to make a video, I'm going to make two videos talking about my hip injury and the hip surgery that I had last year. So I'm going to be splitting it up into two parts because I can't put a story that spans over 2 years into one video. So part one is going to be about the injury itself, how it happened, when it happened, why it happened. And part two is going to be just about the hip surgery itself and the rehab process and the recovery process and my experience with that. So I'm making this video, I don't know, just maybe it will help someone else dealing with injury. Drew Likes Rice has started talking about some problems that he's having with his knee that is affecting his running. And also Bonnie Rebecca does mention an injury that she had from dancing, and it just so happens that that's the same injury that I had. My injury happened in summer 2014, so the end of August 2014, so a little over a year and a half ago. Just to give some context to this injury, at the time I'd been doing Roto 4 for a few months. I'd read 80-10-10, I was watching freely, but I wasn't really doing it properly. I wasn't eating enough calories, so I was severely underweight at this stage. And I was also going through my exercise addiction, and I was running obsessively. I was working abroad in France on a campsite, and yeah, I was working full time. So I was putting a lot of pressure on my body, and I wasn't physically healthy, I wasn't physically strong. So yeah, this is basically what was going on at the time that I had my injury. While working at the campsite, I was running outside, and I was running the same route every time that I was running. And there was this, at the beginning of the run, there was this house with this dog in it who used to, every time you'd pass, he would come running out and bark at you, and it was all very scary, but he never really hurt anybody. But still, it was kind of like a scary moment, running past the house, and then you'd be like, phew. On the way back, you'd also have to pass the house. So what I would do is I would sprint at the end, and I would look back over my shoulder and check if the dog was there or not, and it was always a very relieving moment when he wasn't. So I was coming to the very end of the summer, and it was my last run. I was flying back to Ireland in a few days. I was out for my final run, and I ran past the house and the dog didn't come out, and when I ran back again, I remember sprinting and looking over my shoulder and he wasn't there, and I remember feeling wonderful because I had avoided this evil dog the whole summer. And yeah, so I was getting to like the very final part of my run, and I was still kind of sprinting a little bit, and I passed this house that I passed every single time that I run this route. And this massive, humongous dog, black and white dog, that I'd never seen before and had never shown his face all summer, comes running out of the house and barking, and it was scary as hell. And he started chasing me, and I was like, I got such a big fright, and I like started dashing and like running as fast as I could. But obviously he was faster than me, he was catching up with me. And I was running it was kind of like in a wood park place, and I was running on the path, and there was like this steep drop, well, it was about 7-foot drop, I'd say, down below the path, and there was this like electric wire running along the side of the path. So obviously in the heat of the moment I was terrified. I thought this dog was going to attack me. He probably was. So I threw myself under the electric wire and fell down the steep ditch and landed smack on my right side, and it was very gravelly and it was very hard, like pavement, and yeah, I had a pretty strong bad impact fall. So I tried to move away as quickly as I could. Obviously I had a really bad pain in my right leg, up the top of my right leg, around by my hip. And I just thought it was like, it just felt like a strain, it just felt like a sprain, you know, or that I'd like pulled a muscle or something. I've played sport my whole entire life, and I've never ever had an injury. I've never even had a cramp in my leg. You get the odd knock every now and then, and you know, it just wears off. So I thought that's what was gonna happen. I had to kind of hobble back to the campsite and I was in a lot of pain. And when I got there, I was like, I just went to reception to the people who worked there and I was like, burst out crying and I was like, I've been injured, a dog chased me off a ditch. So I went to A&E, and by the time I got to A&E, I knew there was something seriously wrong. I was in so much pain. I couldn't shift my body like from side to side. It was just so painful. Every movement I made, my whole right hip was just so sore. And I remember trying to get up on the hospital bed to lie down for the x-ray, and I was in so much pain. I remember thinking, oh my god, I've broken my hip, I will never run again, like this is the end, there is going to be no more exercise for me, this is absolutely devastating. So I got the x-ray anyway, and it turned out that there was nothing broken, they couldn't see anything, and the doctor said, oh, it's just ligament damage. So I said, when will I be able to run again? And he said, oh, you're going to be 1 week now off that. And I remember saying to him, I remember thinking, oh my god, I cannot go 1 week without running. This is just the end of the world. I literally felt like all my hard work, like all my hard running was just gonna, like all my fitness was just gonna, it was just gonna disappear if I did not run in 1 week. But yeah, obviously that's ridiculous, but this is how I felt at the time. It was all like very traumatic. I couldn't finish my contract at work. I was on crutches. I pretty much just like, didn't want to talk to anybody. I just stayed in my room and like cried. So, and also after a day or two, I realized that this wasn't getting any better. It was not healing. So a few days later, I flew back home to Ireland. I arrived in a wheelchair in all my glory. So eventually, around November, I went back to the physio and I said, look, it just hasn't improved at all. Obviously I was walking better at this stage, but I was getting chronic groin pain, like right in by my hip. And so she said, look, your best bet is to go and get an MRI. Now, I didn't have time to organise to go and get an MRI because the health system is so crap in Ireland. You have to wait for like months to arrange these things. So I was like, oh look, I'm just going to go to New York and see what I can get done over there. So when I was in New York, I left this time, yeah, it was January of 2015 that I moved to New York. I was studying in Columbia University and Barnard, and yeah, so while I was there, I remember going to the gym there and trying to run on the treadmill, and like after about 10 minutes I was like, you know, really sore. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go and get an MRI done. So I arranged to get an MRI done. I saw an orthopedic surgeon, I think it was, and what he thought it was, when I saw him, he said, oh, I think you have a stress fracture in your humerus bone. And I was like, whoa, that's like, your humerus bone is like the thickest bone in your body. If you get a stress fracture in that, that's like, it's pretty difficult to get a stress fracture in like the thickest bone in your body. So the doctors are like, yeah, that's pretty serious, you know, but the only thing that fixes that is rest. And I was like, well, I've been resting for like, it had been several months since the injury and, you know, it hadn't healed. I didn't think it was a stress fracture. But anyway, they did the MRI and the results came back and there was no stress fracture. There was a cartilage tear in my hip joint. And basically what this is called is a hip labral tear. And this is the same thing that Bonnie mentioned in one of her videos. She was talking about her injury and how she was getting pain in her hip, and she went and got an MRI and it showed a hip labral tear. Now basically what a hip labral tear is if you imagine your hip joint, all our joints have like cartilage. So like say the joint that, I don't know, but like say if like you have a joint there and a joint in your shoulder, well all the joints have got like cartilage over them to, I guess, maintain ease of movement and etc. But basically we also have a joint, obviously you have a joint in between your leg to join to your hip, and the cartilage had torn there. Obviously I got a really bad knock and it had torn cartilage. So that was not good because cartilage doesn't repair itself, which is why it hadn't, you know, improved much and why I was getting the same chronic pain. So yeah, basically I said, okay, so what do I do for this now? He said, look, I would recommend you going for more physio before thinking about getting any surgery done. So I was like, okay, that's great, because like obviously I didn't really want surgery. But also at this time I had bought tickets to go to Thailand for the Thai Fruit Festival last year, for last June, and I was really hoping to, you know, get my physio done and get strong enough and get recovered enough to be able to go and cycle with the crew in Chiang Mai. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna do some physio and hopefully that will help it. Okay, so I did a good bit of physio in New York. I was pretty consistent. I was going like twice a week and it just didn't improve. It didn't get any better. So in the end, I couldn't go to Thailand. Luckily I had insurance on my flight so I could get my money back. I was absolutely devastated because obviously I'd been used my whole life to being super fit and being able to work out when I wanted. And yeah, it was just devastating to like not be able to go to Thailand. I wasn't strong enough to obviously like carry suitcases around with me and, you know, assemble a bike and go cycling up Doi Tap. It just would have been irresponsible of me to have gone with that injury. When I got back from New York, I went to see another surgeon at home in Dublin, and he said, okay, look, we'll just go ahead with the surgery. So yeah, so that is part one of the video. In part two, I'm going to talk about the actual surgery and what they did in the surgery and what it was like after the surgery and rehab and how I am now. So yeah, definitely stay tuned for that, and thank you for watching. And if you have had this injury, if you have had similar debilitating injuries, then yeah, comment below. I'd love to hear, and stay tuned for part two.